I would ask, what on earth do you think you're doing? It's we're looking at a U.S. economy that, this morning's jobs report was really good. Everything is kind of coming up roses. It's soft landing everywhere, and yet he's preparing, or claims he's preparing, to go on this uh, trade war against everybody. And the question really is, why? What is it? Why do you want to do something so disruptive when you're inheriting an economy that is really looking pretty good?
I'm looking, Paul Krugman, it's something you taught with a piece of chalk at Princeton and at City College. The basic idea here is a tariff chart, which is the microeconomics and dynamics. We talked to Richard Clarida the other day about the deadweight loss of tariffs. For our listeners, the magnitude of tariffs, does it matter? Or is there just simply a deadweight loss to each American citizen?
Oh, no, the magnitude. I mean, one of the things that you learn from studying the economics of tariffs is that tariffs at low rates do very, very little harm. We had an average tariff of something like 2 to 3%. We do at the moment coming into this.
Right.
That, if you ask, how much difference would it make if we got that down to zero? The answer is basically invisible. But if you go from 5% to 25%, which is what Trump's talking about for everybody, and 60% for China, then it's, roughly speaking, we think that the losses are go up roughly as the square of the tariff rate. So with Trump talking not about a modest increase in tariffs, not about tariffs on a few products, but across the board trade war, Smoot-Hawley tariff levels, that starts to become a really, really big deal.
Paul, I've been and folks, the textbook on this is Krugman Opsfeld. It's all, you throw Ken Rogoff in as well, but Krugman Opsfeld, there's some adult textbooks out there of what Krugman invented for us in international economics. Paul, I've always defended you by saying the Venn diagram of Krugman economics and John Taylor economics at Stanford is pretty tight. Can Kevin Hassett advise this president towards some form of tariff moderation or sanity?
Kevin Hassett has a history of basically saying whatever. I mean, he's been a loyalist and a courtier. I would be really shocked if he goes to, tariffs appears to be a real Trump obsession, and I'd be shocked if Hassett or actually anybody stood up to Trump and said, "Mr. President, you're thinking about this all wrong." I've been writing. For listeners, I'm retired from the Times, but not from life, and I'm writing almost every day on my Substack.
Your Substack? He needs to make a buck on this. That's what it is, Paul.
Well, it's free at the moment.
How do they still see your writing as you've exited the Times?
paulkrugman.substack.com.
There you go.
Or just Google Krugman Substack and you'll find it. And look, I'm free to. It's a newsletter / blog, and I'm in. And what I wrote the other day was we're seeing a continual dynamic where people who claim to be close to Trump but remain anonymous tell newspaper writers, "Hey, he's not really as crazy as he sounds," and then Trump immediately reacts with a Truth Social post saying, "Yes, I am." So it does look like we're really talking about, in tariffs on a scale that we really have not seen. We're talking about a reversal of really 90 years of U.S. policy of trying to.
Where I wanted to go, Professor. I mean, I grew up on Global Wall Street, and many of our listeners and viewers as well, of internationalism being a fundamental business tenet. Now, that's taken a back seat here over the last 10 years. Is internationalism dead?
Well, probably in the form it was, yeah. I mean, a lot of this was U.S. hegemony, and we thought that a more prosperous, peaceful world was in our interest. What was good for the world was good for America, and we thought that freer trade was good for America, and we led the way. We built a world trading system kind of in U.S., in our own image. It's very rules-bound, legalistic. It's and it worked. We managed to get everybody's tariffs down. We got to a world of pretty close to free trade. We've been, in the last couple of decades, the European Union, which is not very united on many things, but is unified on trade policy, sort of co-managed the system with us. Now we've gotten much more nationalistic, and even Biden was pursuing, for I think pretty good reasons, some pretty seriously nationalistic policies. Right. Specifically on technology and China. But so the age of full-on more globalism is good. That's behind us.
Yep.
That really died about a decade ago. But there's a big difference between saying, okay, we're going to be much more selective about this and maybe even be protectionist here and there, and saying, Smoot-Hawley had the right idea, which is basically what Trump is saying.
Right. So, Professor, today's a big jobs day here on a global Wall Street, showing again the strength of the U.S. labor market. That calls into question another one of the president-elect's policies, which is about immigration and what to do with the migrants that are already here. From an economic perspective, how would you advise the president on thinking about immigration policy?
I mean, immigration has been one of the great strengths of the U.S. economy. Whatever else you may think about it, it's not actually a source of crime or any of the things that he says, but the immigration has been a tremendous safety valve. It's helped to contain inflation, and the immigrants, particularly, if I might say, undocumented immigrants, they're not evenly spread across the U.S. economy. They're a really critical part of the labor force in some particular sectors. If you're worried about agriculture or meat packing or construction, those are all sectors where we have an aging. The native-born population is aging. The working age native-born population is shrinking because we've had low fertility for a really long time. So that without immigration, we would be we would be Japan. And from an economic point of view, this is a tremendous self-own.
Paul Krugman with us. We are thrilled that he's with us here with CUNY, CUNY's Stone Center on Social Economic Inequality, among others, and affiliated also with the LSE, I should say, and of course years at Princeton as well. I talked to him about his first paper once at Yale, which was on Star Trek. This is a few years ago.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah, just after Ricardo. But the answer is the laureate Paul Krugman with us. Thank you for the huge response to Professor Krugman with us this morning. Paul, I've said this before, but I guess there can be a tour of duty when you win a second Nobel Prize. You deserve a second Nobel Prize for your persistent discussion of wages and monopsony in America. Folks, monopsony, the model, is a rubber plantation in Malaysia where the rubber plantation sets the price because they have power over all the farmers and the rubber trees and the manufacturing process. Professor Krugman, how is monopsony in America affecting our listeners and our viewers on YouTube?
Oh, gosh. I mean, in a way, what it's telling you, I mean, the main monopsony issue on wages is that it's okay to raise the minimum wage. I mean, this is where we really started to take it seriously when you first had the work by Card and Kruger, now replicated by many people, which says that local minimum wage increases don't actually reduce employment. Econ 101, unless I have to say, even in my own textbook, we do talk through how a minimum wage can reduce employment, but it doesn't actually seem to happen in the United States. Now, that's because minimum wages are low in the United States, and if you set the minimum wage at $40 an hour, even I would accept that would have some employment consequences. But so that's the main place where it hurts. Although if you are a small supplier or something trying to peddle your stuff on Amazon, the fact, that you've got a giant Bezos-sized monopsonist certainly affects your business.
I mean, it's very interesting to see Paul Krugman and the conservatives listening. I'm going to frame this, Paul, as a liberality, in a way is a Lockean individualism of conservative theory in America. Should we be more like Germany, flat on their back? Should we be more like Sweden? Should we be more like France?
Well, I mean, ideally, we should be more like Denmark, which is a place that does strong welfare state, strong unions, and does it well. It's everybody's got. One of the things I've spent many years teaching a course, first at Princeton, then at CUNY, on economics of the welfare state, comparing different countries. And one of the things you learn, first of all, the United States has we have a much bigger welfare state than we like to imagine, but it's much smaller than what European countries have. But there's no country that does everything right. U.S. healthcare is a nightmare. U.S. retirement system is actually pretty good. France, it's exactly the opposite. So it's not a simple more government is good. I mean, I think conservatives always think that less government is good. Liberals, progressives never think that more government is automatically good. But there are certainly things where we should be doing more, and obviously that's on hold for the next few years. But there are lots we can learn a lot from other countries. If that's one thing I would say as an international economist, the biggest problem with Americans is that we don't actually seem to believe the rest of the world exists, and we don't think that we can learn lessons from things that other countries do right.
Professor, most of the market participants that we speak to, particularly over the last several months, and they see a data point like today's non-farm payrolls, and they feel like the Fed has engineered a pretty solid, soft landing. What concerns you? What worries you about this U.S. economy right here?
I think the U.S. economy, as of right now, is in very good shape.
Okay.
I am worried. I've been around a while, and the whole AI furor and all of the money being thrown at that technology gives me definite 1999 vibes. The sense that we may be having, even if the technology does do a lot of good stuff, and there's some indications that it will, the valuations look awfully high, and you can very easily imagine a kind of 2000, 2001 type. But the biggest concerns are policy. I mean, if you actually believe that Trump is going to do what he promised in the campaign with these massive tariffs, mass deportations, and let's not forget, taking away a lot of the Federal Reserve's independence, it's not at all hard to see us gratuitously. I mean, we're in good shape right now, but we could very easily have a gratuitous outbreak of stagflation in America, and it will be entirely coming top down from the White House.
Very quickly here, Professor Krugman. Paul, we got to do this or Krugman won't come back. The Substack this morning, the real threat of fake numbers. Paul Krugman, are you suggesting the president and his administration will cook the books?
I think that's a very high possibility. If you believe what I'm saying about inflation is actually going to go up substantially. And do you really imagine that Trump will just sit there and not say these are fake numbers, it's fake news, and put pressure on the Bureau of Labor Statistics to produce better numbers? Yeah. I mean, we've seen populist regimes do that all over the world. Why imagine that it won't happen here? And I know that people who've had long careers at the Bureau of Labor Statistics are really worried about this. So I was just saying, flag this. This is something to watch.